Most women don't realize the decision was already made before they ask the question. I was watching something recently, a court show, one of those daytime programs where people air their legal disputes in front of a judge. The cases are real, the outcomes are binding, and the patterns are impossible to miss once you start paying attention. A woman comes on. She's there to file for child support. She explains that she and the man had been engaged. They were planning a wedding. She got pregnant during the engagement. Then they had the ceremony, a full reception, guests, the whole performance. After that, they were supposed to file the paperwork, the official marriage license. That's when he disappeared. Turns out he was already married, legally, to someone else. 3 kids with that woman. She had no idea. The judge asks her a simple question. Did you ever check his marital status? It's public record. You can pull it up in 2 minutes. She says no, she didn't. Now, here's what I noticed. This wasn't an isolated case. I kept seeing variations of the same structure. Different women, different men, same sequence of events. Engagement, pregnancy, some version of commitment theater, then collapse. And in almost every case, the woman hadn't verified anything. No background check, no public record search, no confirmation of what he'd told her. What struck me wasn't the deception. Men lie. That's not new. What struck me was the level of confidence required to move forward without checking. And I don't mean confidence in him, I mean confidence in herself. Confidence that if everything fell apart, she'd be fine. Because let's be clear about what that decision actually involves. If you get pregnant before legal marriage, not a ceremony, not a ring, not a promise, but a legally binding contract, you are making a choice. You are choosing to carry and deliver a child with no enforceable claim to financial support, no automatic custody rights in most states, and no legal presumption of paternity unless he voluntarily signs the birth certificate or you go through a court process to establish it. You're also choosing to do this in a country where single motherhood is still socially penalized. Not in the abstract, in practical terms. Employment discrimination is real. Housing discrimination is real. School enrollment questions are designed around 2-parent households. Extended family dynamics shift. Dating options narrow. And none of that resets just because you eventually marry someone else. So the question isn't, why did he lie? The question is, what were you so sure of that you didn't need to verify? Because here's the part that doesn't get discussed. The confidence these women display isn't coming from financial security. Most of them aren't wealthy. They're not sitting on family money or passive income. They don't have the kind of safety net that would allow them to raise a child alone without struggle. And it's not coming from legal protection because they've actively skipped the step that would provide it. So where's it coming from? I think it's coming from belief. Belief that the situation is different, that he's different, that the outcome will be different because the emotional experience feels different. And that belief holds, right up until the moment it doesn't. Here's what I mean. Let's say you meet someone, you start seeing him, you get engaged, you're planning a future together. At some point, you decide to stop using contraception, or you're careless about it, or you actively try to get pregnant. Whatever the specifics, you make a choice that has a very specific potential consequence. Now, in that moment, what are you assuming? You're assuming he'll stay. You're assuming he'll follow through. You're assuming that if the pregnancy happens, it will bring you closer, not push him away. You're assuming that the emotional bond you feel is mutual, stable, and strong enough to override any logistical or financial concerns he might have. But here's the thing. You don't actually know any of that. You believe it. And belief is enough to act on. But it's not the same as verification. And the cost of being wrong isn't symmetrical. If he walks away, he faces social judgment in theory. In practice, he moves on. He meets someone else. No one asks him about the child he doesn't support. No one checks his history before dating him. There's no scarlet letter. There's no public record that follows him into job interviews or lease applications. But if you're left with the child, you carry that outcome in every context. Financially, logistically, socially, And it doesn't matter how much he said he loved you. It doesn't matter how real it felt. The outcome is the same, so why take the risk? And I'm not asking that from a moral position. I'm asking it from a practical one. What's the upside? What are you gaining by skipping verification that's worth the potential downside? Because from the outside, the pattern is very clear. The men who do this, the ones who get multiple women pregnant without legal commitment, they're not impressive. They're not high earners. They don't have stable careers. A lot of them have inconsistent work histories. Some have criminal records. Almost all of them have previous children they don't support. And yet, they have no trouble finding women willing to sleep with them, willing to get pregnant by them, willing to believe that this time will be different. Meanwhile, men with stable income, clean records, and no dependents often struggle to get attention at all. Why? I think it's because women aren't assessing risk the way they think they are. They're assessing feeling, and feeling is a terrible proxy for outcome. Let me give you an example. Let's say a man has 2 ex-wives. He has 4 kids from those marriages. He pays support for none of them. He's not in contact with any of the children. His work history is sporadic. He has no assets. You meet him. You start seeing him. You get pregnant. He says he loves you. He says this time is different. He says he's ready now. What's different? Structurally, nothing. He's the same person. He's made the same choice twice before. There's no reason to believe the third outcome will change unless something fundamental in his circumstances has changed. And usually it hasn't. But women convince themselves anyway. And the reason they convince themselves is because he's convincing. He says the right things. He knows what to say. He's done this before. And because the emotional experience feels real, the risk disappears. But the risk didn't disappear. It just got ignored. Now, here's where it gets tricky, because I'm not saying women are stupid. I'm saying they're optimizing for the wrong variable. They're optimizing for emotional certainty. And emotional certainty can coexist with extremely bad decisions. You can feel completely sure about someone and still be completely wrong about what they'll do. And the problem is, by the time you realize you were wrong, the consequences are already locked in. So here's what I don't understand. If you live in a country where single motherhood is stigmatized, where the father's name matters for school forms, where child support enforcement is weak, where you'll be asked about your marital status at every doctor's appointment, why wouldn't you lock in legal protection before taking the biological risk? Why wouldn't you verify his marital status? Why wouldn't you check his financial history? Why wouldn't you confirm that he's actually free to marry you before getting pregnant? And if your answer is, because I trusted him, my response is, so what? Trust isn't enforceable. Love isn't enforceable. Promises aren't enforceable. A marriage license is enforceable. A court order is enforceable. Public records are enforceable. Everything else is just feeling. And feeling doesn't hold up in family court. I'll tell you what I think is happening. I think a lot of women are walking around with a level of confidence that doesn't match their actual level of protection. They believe, genuinely believe, that their situation is different, that their relationship is different, that the man they're with is different. And maybe he is. Maybe he's the exception. But you won't know that until after the commitment is tested. And by then, it's too late to undo the choice. Here's another thing that doesn't get said. When you skip verification, you're not just trusting him. You're trusting your own judgment under conditions specifically designed to cloud it. You're aroused. You're emotionally invested. You're in the middle of the bonding process. Your brain is chemically primed to ignore red flags. Oxytocin doesn't make you smarter. It makes you more attached. And attachment feels like certainty, even when the data says otherwise. So when you tell yourself, I just know he's different, what you actually know is that he feels different. And that feeling is real, but the feeling isn't evidence. It's a signal that your evaluation system is compromised. The women who get burned the hardest are often the ones who were the most sure. They didn't have doubts. They didn't second guess. They felt clarity. And that clarity is what made them vulnerable. Because clarity shuts down the checking process. It makes verification feel unnecessary. Why would you investigate someone you're certain about? But certainty isn't the same as accuracy. You can be certain and wrong, and the more certain you are, the less likely you are to notice the mismatch until it's too late. This is why the pattern repeats. It's not that women aren't learning, it's that the mechanism producing the confidence, emotional intensity, chemical bonding, narrative coherence doesn't care about past outcomes. It resets with every new relationship. Every time it feels new. Every time it feels different. And every time the same structural risks are present. The men who exploit this understand it instinctively. They know that if they can generate enough emotional intensity early, the verification step gets skipped. They know that once a woman is emotionally committed, she'll rationalize the gaps in his story. She'll fill in the missing information with optimistic assumptions. She'll downplay inconsistencies because acknowledging them would mean admitting she made a mistake in trusting him. And by the time the truth comes out, the pregnancy is already underway, the commitment has already been made, the exit costs are now catastrophic. So if you're going to take the risk anyway, at least do it with your eyes open. At least verify the basics. At least make sure you're not the third woman in a pattern you didn't know existed. Because the men who do this, the ones who repeat the same cycle over and over, they don't have trouble finding new partners. They don't have trouble convincing the next woman that this time is different. And the women who get burned don't get a second chance at the same decision. They just get the outcome. The confidence doesn't protect you, it just makes the fall feel more surprising.